Buying a home? Don't panic. Just listen to the rest of this podcast. My guest today, Skip Walker, is also one of the co-authors of the Code Check series. All right, we got Skip Walker here today. You know, Skip, I don't know if a lot of my listeners are going to know who you are, so why don't you introduce yourself and all your years of wisdom?
I don't know about the wisdom part. So I've been a property inspector since 2003, so 20 years, give or take a little.
Nice.
And have always been kind of interested in building codes. And ironically, about 2000, I started, and I'm not a contractor, about 2000, I started doing
I'm happy to hear that.
remodeling on, I'm sorry?
You said you're not a contractor. I said I'm happy to hear that.
I started doing remodeling on my mom's house. I was going to do a couple bathrooms in the kitchen and a service upgrade. And so I went down to my local jurisdiction and said, this is my mom's house. I want to do it right. What should I do? And they literally told me, the guy at the counter said, go get code check books and make it look like the pictures. You'll be fine. So I'm serious. You can't make this up.
Wow.
So I did, and I think I had one time where they wrote a correction notice on the clearance on a toilet. That was it, and did both bathrooms, tile surrounds, all that. 200 amp service upgrade from an old Federal Pacific.
Did that yourself?
Yep.
Wow.
And yeah, it was all good. So anyway, fast forward one night, I'm a CREA and ASHI inspector, and have been doing teaching and whatnot since the probably mid 2000s. I started out in my local chapter doing, we would have pre-meeting education and then education talk, and no one wanted to do building codes during chapter time. So I said, well, to the board, will you let me do like a pre-meeting education hour? So I did. I started with the IRC, because at that time there was no California Residential Code. It was based on the UBC. And I started on chapter 1, and took me about 4 years at, 1 hour per month to work my way through. And part of the reason I wanted to do it, because the best way to learn something is to have to explain it to somebody.
Right.
So
right.
I was using that as a way to study for the IRC certification exams.
There you go.
And as I cleared, I did the building, went and took the building certification exam, did the plumbing, passed that, electrical and mechanical, and got my combination IRC cert. And that was, I don't know, probably like 2007 or so. And then about, fast forward, Douglas Hansen, who is the primary author on Code Check and has been since the 90s, is again kind of a twist of fate, a member of our chapter. And he came up to me one night at a chapter meeting. This has probably been about close to 7 years back, and said, he said, would you come outside? I thought, first thing I thought is, what did I do to tick him off? Which I've done a few times. And
yeah, you do have a sense of humor.
As my niece tells me, Uncle Skip, you're not as funny as you think you are. So anyway, Douglas takes me outside and he said, would you be interested in co-authoring Code Check with me? And I thought, I kind of like banged the side of my head and like, did you say what I thought you said?
Nice.
And I said, are you kidding? Of course I would. And so anyway.
That's a good compliment right there. Yeah, that's great.
We're like 7 books in now since I started.
So you're also a co-author of the book, is what you're saying?
Yep. I started when he asked me to do that. I joined, and they were at that point. He at that point was finishing building fourth edition,
Mm-hmm.
and which is the building provisions chapters 1 through 10 in the IRC. And so I edited and proofread that book. So I'm not on it as an author, but there's like a little microscopic text that says thanks for proofreading or something. And then the books since then, I've been a co-author doing Code Check 8th and 9th edition. Now I was today working on proofreading Code Check 10th, which won't be going to the printer for a few weeks yet, but this is the most current. This is our kind of our flagship original book.
Got it.
That was 9th edition. And Code Check kind of came into being in a kind of a strange way. Redwood Carden, who you see his name on all the books, he's the guy that originally came up with the idea. And he was actually an electrical inspector over in the city of Oakland, so right across the bay. And one day they called them all into the office and said, you're not going to be dedicated inspectors now. Everybody's going to do everything. So you're all combination inspectors. Go forth and don't sin. So he didn't know anything about plumbing or building or mechanical. So he started putting together these little cheat sheets for that stuff so he'd know what to look for. And that turned into something he called Woody's Fast Facts. And they
It's kind of catchy. Yeah, it's catchy.
Yeah. Anyway, so he at some point or another, I really don't remember whether it was Taunton Press reaching out to him or him reaching out to Taunton, but him and Taunton Press got hooked up. They actually came up with the name Code Check and have it copyrighted. And we've sold 1,400,000 books since 1997.
That's great. So, that's because I recently contacted you about. I actually purchased a couple of the latest volumes recently, and that's what got me to call you. And because I wasn't thinking when I ordered the book, I was like, oh, let me upgrade my book because it's been a while since I bought another one. And then I'm looking at it going, oh, Skip's name's on here. That's right. I totally spaced it because I think I had a encounter with you, whether it was on one of the group meetings on Zoom or something like that a while back. So we haven't had a chance to really talk to each other a lot, you and I. So we don't know each other that well. But I have noticed that I
remember you asking questions and comments in like a Silicon Valley meeting chat.
Yeah. I had a few questions.
Is my home Korea ASHI chapter.
Yeah, that meeting there, it kind of took me by surprise when I was listening to that meeting because all the guys you had on there, all the inspectors, you guys were like really going deep, like deep into electrical. And, as a home inspector and listening to all the other inspectors over the years talking and everybody giving their input on what you should and shouldn't be doing, we always tell each other, oh, don't be reporting code on one thing unless you're going to report it on everything. So it kind of makes me want to ask you a question there. It brings up a good question. So I understand knowing what the codes are it's a good knowledge to have, especially when you're inspecting houses. You want to know what's wrong. If that looks off, how do you know it's off? Well, I happen to read the code books and I know what's going on. So a new inspector coming in, they're not going to know this. So what kind of advice would you give to a brand new inspector coming in who's just becoming aware of all these, code check books, the fact that he should not be reporting code because home inspectors don't report code, as far as I understand, unless you're going to tell me something different.
Well, I would say for a newbie coming in, someone new, going through school doesn't make you an inspector. Unfortunately, that will probably teach you enough to be dangerous. and I put myself in that category too.
Sure.
There used to be a guy up here, Jerry McCarthy, who was the guy that kind of mentored me, and Jerry was the kind of guy that they name awards after. The Jerry McCarthy Fellow Award is the second highest honor that you can get in Korea, which is the oldest state organization, certifying organization in California, and one of the two oldest in the United States. So he always used to tell us, you follow the SOPs and don't guess. Don't get out in front of yourself, and saying "I don't know" is okay.
Yep.
You can say "I don't know, but I'll find out," and then go research.
Exactly.
And the more you do that, the more you learn, and the fewer times you have to say "I don't know." So yes. I do actually in reports sometimes put code citations. I never say this isn't to code,
right?
Because that's the role of a jurisdictional inspector.
Correct.
Is to interpret the code. One of the things that both Douglas Hansen and Jerry used to say is, Jerry was adamant about not doing code inspections because, and I agree with that. That you're not going there to go through the house and write a punch list and a correction notice. That's a jurisdictional inspector. You're doing life and safety and habitability. The California Business and Profession Code is the governing regulation, and it says that we're supposed to identify anything that affects safety, habitability, value, and desirability, which is a really poorly written section, but that's what happens when you have realtors writing your regulations for you as a home inspector. So
yeah, that's never good.
No, they have no desire to make our job easy, and at least at the state level, I think there's a ton of really great real estate agents out there. I have mixed feelings about, I would say, overall.
Right.
But back to the code issue, Hansen always used to say, there's nothing that says you can't cite code, just don't be wrong. And since most people aren't in a position to know what right and wrong is, I think that sort of backs into you shouldn't be doing it. I do. The other day, I put a code citation in a report where this electrical panel in a detached building was just signed off by the city. As a matter of fact, the city inspector was still there when I'm inspecting.
When you gave him a low score.
Well, I mean, it was wrong.
Yeah.
And
gotcha.
Of course, the agents are all like, "Well, the city signed off on it," and I said, from your lips to God's ears, that should mean something. But I don't want to offend anybody, but on the other hand, I'm not going to sign off on something or not going to say it's okay just because some jurisdictional guy missed something.
Well, if you know, you know. So, I mean, if you know something's wrong, then you know. Then you got to stick to your guns.
I gave him. I don't put the citation. I don't put the words in.
Right.
At the very end of the comment, I'll say ref CRC blah blah blah, and I told them where to go look. And if they want to avail themselves of that, that's great. If they don't, I don't really care. It's not my job to make them pay attention or even fix stuff. I just want to make sure later on, if somebody comes in behind me, an electrician, and says, "Well, this is wrong, and your home inspector should have told you," that I can point at a piece of paper and say, "No, I told you pretty clearly." So
let me go back real quick. You made a comment a little while ago that really caught my attention because it's something that I always say, but mostly to myself, and that is
I talk to myself a lot too. So
yeah, and that is taking a course does not make you a home inspector. So that along those lines of what you mentioned earlier. So that's a very good topic right there. So
it's huge.
Yeah, I want to get into that with you right now because that's something that these new inspectors need to understand. And look, you can go get a certification anywhere you want. It's honestly, in my opinion, I've been down that road. I've got certifications in different things. And at the end of the day, the people calling you to inspect their house don't give a shit about your certifications. You're going to get a few people that are wise to what's going on, and they will understand what your certifications are. Very few, though. And I think a lot of these new guys are getting these certifications real quickly without really having a lot of experience. And then they're going out there and getting themselves in trouble. So this business,
absolutely agree.
Yeah, this business is about on-the-job experience. I can't stress that enough. If you haven't done a paid inspection yet and you're working your way towards it, you need to go inspect every single relative of yours house that you can get your hands on, every one of your friends, their friends. Go do a whole bunch of them and really understand what's in a house. Because if you're just getting into this field and you don't really have a construction background or any, like, you never built a deck on a house or you never roofed a house before, if you have no understanding of how these things work, there's a lot of liability here, and you really need to understand that getting into this. So taking courses, you will learn something, but nothing's going to replace on-the-job training, on-the-job experience.
Absolutely agree. Jerry McCarthy always used to say, everybody wants to forget their first 100 inspections, and I'm right there. I mean, I look back at some of my original reports, and it's like, oh my God, what was I thinking?
Yeah.
And I think you go through stages. I mean, from like up 100, you start to kind of get your legs a little bit. And then at 500, you hit another plateau, and at 1,000, you hit another. And each of those times, you go through these like massive rewrites of your library, trying to fix the past sins.
All your responses. Yep. I do it all the time.
Just never. Yep, that never goes away. Anybody that tells me that they just use the library that fill in the blank software company sent them, they scare me, because those libraries are pathetic at best,
right?
And fraught with liability, and they quite often aren't California specific,
right?
I have guys. I have a termite guy that he asked me one day, this has probably been about 6 months ago, he said, did they change the rules on guardrails in California back to 36? And I said, no. Yeah, it's 42 inches, even though the IRC says 36. California's got what they call a necessary amendment. And he said, boy, I was just with an inspector the other day, and new guy, and I said something about the guardrails. He's like, oh no, they're fine. They're more than 36. And I know what it is. If he read, one of these, or, one of our books, which are based on the IRC, it's going to say 36 inches. And then there's a little asterisk, and it says California's 42. But if you don't read that stuff, or if you read the base code, or if you take a class from a national organization, all that stuff's going to be based on kind of generic model codes. It's not going to be based on California specific.
It's not going to be specific.
There's some very real differences between California and codes in other parts of the country.
Correct. Yeah, that's definitely correct. So yeah, I mean, like, going back to the responses on, I will think I have my response for like a very common thing. I have a canned response. I go through it every few months, and then all of a sudden I'll get a question from a customer, and it makes me think about rewriting that whole thing, because they looked at it in a perspective I did never thought of before.
Yeah.
And it's
absolutely.
It's really interesting, and that alone is valuable. But
absolutely.
you will never get that from me or from you. You're going to get it from a customer who's just going to say something to you, and you're going to go, whoa, you know what? I never thought of it in that realm before. Okay, let me rewrite this a little bit better to cover that.
I look at my reports, and when I first started out, I would get phone calls. Someone would say, what do you mean about this, that,
Right.
the other thing?
Right.
And I would take every one of those things. And if I got more than a couple phone calls on the same comment, then that comment's not telling people what it needs to tell them, and I would rewrite it.
Right.
Today, knock on wood, I get almost no phone calls. And I'm serious. It's not that I don't want them.
Yep.
I encourage people to call. But if the report doesn't answer their questions, then that's on me.
Right. I very seldomly get phone calls too. Sometimes
I know guys around here that have been inspectors for years, and they talk about how they just get phone call after phone call. It's like, that takes so much time. It's like, I don't want to like badmouth anybody, but okay, so you got to take some ownership of that problem and fix it.
Yeah, the report writing is not up to par. That's what it is.
Yep.
So maybe just address it that way. With, hey, you know what? Let's work on your report writing. How you wording stuff. Because if you're just making it generic and not understanding it, it's anyone's going to call you for clarity. And I do tell my customers every day, hey, look, if you read the report and something something doesn't make sense to you, just call me up and I'll clarify it for you. But like I said, I very rarely get that. Yeah.
I tell people you can call me anytime or email me from now until the cows come home. I had somebody call me one time 5-6 years after I did the report to ask me where the water shutoff was. And seriously. And no, it was the electric. It was the electric disconnect. Because they had some problem with the house and they didn't remember. I don't know how they remembered my phone number, but they didn't remember.
Well, actually, that was probably the first time they opened the report.
Well, but when I would start, when I first started, I didn't put a lot of pictures in. I mean, I did put some in, but I put a few in, and almost right away, people would call me and say, "Where's the water shut off? Where's the gas shut off? Where's the electric shut off?" And it says right in the report, the water shut off is located at, the gas is at, and so I thought, okay, so clearly I'm not communicating properly in words. So at that point, and this is 20 years ago, I started putting photos in of gas, water, and electric. And
I do the same.
I don't think anybody that I know of was doing that at that point. And I stopped getting phone calls. I thought, okay.
Well, if you're lonely, you better take that back out of your report. If you miss the phone calls, you just take that out of your report.
Yeah.
But
the point is, let's answer the questions in the report and not have to deal with it after the fact, because it's just time that's wasted. And I don't think you're giving the clients good value if you're writing reports such that they have to call you for clarification all the time.
And not to mention
that's one man's opinion.
Yeah, sure. And not to mention, when you have to take a bunch of phone calls every week, you're wasting, well, I wouldn't call it wasting their time, but you're wasting your time, because now you could be doing something else like writing today's report, but now you're tied up with that. So it's kind of like you're always going backwards, and that's not something I believe in. I just, I like to keep moving forward.
You're wasting their time too. I mean, they're having to take time to connect and.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true.
But anyway.
But if they just don't know, if they just don't know.
I try to write reports to answer questions. So I don't want to beg questions. I want to answer them.
Did you know that Skip Walker is also one of the co-authors of the Code Check series that you can find at codecheck.com? That's CODECHECK.com. The Code Check series books are the most widely used code reference series in the U.S. Each Code Check book is a condensed guide to the most commonly used code sections. They include many of the most common code violations encountered by building inspectors, contractors, do-it-yourselfers, and homeowners. New editions of codes typically are issued every 3 years. Each edition of Code Check is based on specific sets of codes, and most books include summaries of a code changes to link them to the prior edition of codes as well. With over 1.3 million copies sold since 1995, Code Check is the leader in navigating and understanding the voluminous, complex, and sometimes tedious world of the codes. Code Check, your key to the codes. One of my favorite parts is the Code Check illustrations option. So for $149.95, you can download up to 358 full color, high res illustrations that you are allowed to add to your home inspection report if you want to better explain to a client with a good visual aid. Order your Code Check series today at codecheck.com. So as far as the Code Check goes, I want to kind of keep this guided towards, somebody starting out, new home inspectors, how to utilize these books. So
I would suggest a couple things to people.
Okay.
Number one is follow your standards of practice, whatever they are. ASHI or CREA. I do litigation work, and one of the biggest problems I see is people. I had a case just like it was probably last year, where the guy's contract said he used the CREA standards of practice, and then his report said he used ASHI.
No way.
You got to pick one side of the fence to be on,
Wow.
and then stay there, because they're not the same.
Right.
They're different. Those two, and it could be InterNACHI, whatever it is. Pick an SOP, and then as a new person, don't try to exceed the standards. You'll have enough on your plate just hitting a baseline SOP compliant report. And do that and do it really well. And then if you want to start ratcheting your game up, that's a good time to do it.
Sure. Good advice.
I suggest to people our initial book, which is what we call Code Check Combo, is 32 pages, and it's a quarter of its building, a quarter of its electrical, a quarter of its mechanical, and a quarter of its plumbing. So it's a little bit of everything. I would not, and that's as opposed to this book here, which is Code Check Complete. That's 350 pages of stuff. This is too much for a new person. This is like drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah,
versus,
I got to be honest with you. That book's too much for me too, not just a new person.
Yeah. So
That's crazy.
This is all we get people all the time. Like, I'm a new inspector. Which one of these should I buy? And this is where I shoot them. And this is also the cheapest book. It's $20.
Right.
So it gives you a little flavor. All the Code Check books are really designed around the basic kind of stuff that you would run into if you were a jurisdictional inspector doing rough and final inspections. So they're going to hit the high points, the stairs. What's the tread and riser limitations? Handrails on stairs, guardrails, deck heights before you need a guardrail, basic deck construction, electrical panels and electrical disconnects, and water mains and bonding and grounding and all that kind of stuff. It hits all that stuff. So don't try to bite off more than you can chew. Just
right. And I just got this one from you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's building. That's a 50 page book.
Yep.
Just building provisions.
Got it.
So that's bigger than this one. And it's all, I'm sorry, the other one was plumbing mechanical. So that's the 50 page. Plumbing mechanical is a 50 page book that's just plumbing and mechanical. So this is 30 pages. That's more than enough for a new person to kind of start cutting their teeth on. For most people, they're never going to want to go that much deeper until they get more comfortable with the basics, and then they may want to dive in. My suggestion to people is find the thing you're most uncomfortable with and make that your focus. Because if you kind of have a handle on building and you're not too uncomfortable with plumbing and mechanical, but you're scared to death of electrical, then make yourself an electrical expert. No, and that's
electrical is always a mystery, man. Always. That's
most
why
people are scared to death of electrical, and you know what? They should be, because it kills people if they do it wrong.
That's true.
But the point being is, take your weakness and make it a strength, and then
Good advice.
you'll really up your game. That I teach classes at like the ASHI and Korea conferences, and also I teach for building inspectors, and it's part of getting my ICC credentials and doing code check. I'm what's classified as an ICC preferred education provider, so I can teach CE classes for building jurisdictional inspectors, and do. I wish I could find a way to actually make a living teaching, because I actually enjoy it a whole bunch. But the point being is, I started out where everybody that's listening to this is, and that's not knowing a whole lot. And what I didn't do is, every time I found something I didn't understand, I didn't call Jerry McCarthy or somebody else that, the old gray-haired guys, and ask them. I spent a bunch of time researching until I couldn't figure it out on my own, and then I would call them and ask them what was going on. And after a while, I didn't have to do that very much.
Yeah, that's what I do. That's what I do. I reach out to people that got more experience than me, that may have firsthand experience of what I'm just ran into, and I'm like, hey, you know what? I can't find any clarity on this. You got any?
That process is going to make you so much better of an inspector.
Right.
Because a lot of what we do is like, it's like CSI for homes. It's like crime scene investigation. You walk into some homes and they really are like, it's a crime that it got built.
It is a crime.
But I always tell people there's no perfect houses. They do not exist. Yep. And the reality is, we get a lot of tech people up here, so I always use software analogies. It's like, tell me the last time you ever shipped a software release that was perfect, and they all laugh. And I said, same thing with this house. This house, if it's a 1,500 square foot house, has 1.5 million pieces to it. If you count every nut, bolt, screw, piece of wood, somebody was having a bad day. So my goal is to figure out who that was. And they're usually okay with that.